So I want to talk about the rhetoric of the right, the violent political rhetoric of the right. Now, yesterday's attack, July 13th, 2024, I bet you the FBI is going to blame Leonard Peltier. So just a few days ago, Mark Robinson had talked about killing evil on the battlefield. We killed it. And then he said, liberals are going to say that sounds awful. He says, too bad. Some folks need killing. Mark Robinson, he is the Republican running in one of the Carolinas. He said it twice. Some folks need killing. Some folks need killing. And then he said it's a matter of necessity. That's 1 week ago. That's 1 week ago. Mark Robinson is aiming to be the vice president. Choice of the presumptive Republican nominee. Now he condemns political violence out 180. Sharron Angle had floated Second Amendment remedies. Sharron Angle, this is 10, 15 years ago, but Tea Party candidate in Nevada, Republican primary winner. They had said something about an out-of-control Congress. What are you going to do in order to bring down an out-of-control Congress? And she had mentioned Second Amendment remedies. Well, that's interesting. Second Amendment remedies? So we're talking about the violent political rhetoric of the right. They're all up in arms. They got their panties in a bunch about the rhetoric. You even had Boebert say it's because of how Joe Biden speaks. Yeah, because talk about the pot, the kettle calling the pot black. January 6th, I'll get to in a minute. Sarah Palin had crosshairs over Gabby Giffords, over the district of Gabby Gifford. Then Gabby Gifford was shot in the head. Shot in the head. So she had political crosshairs over her district in Arizona. And in 2011, Jared Lee Loughner opened fire in a supermarket parking lot, which had wounded Gabby Giffords. Shot her in the head. And it's incredible, actually, that she survived. She was taken to the University Medical Center in critical condition. She was still conscious within 38 minutes. Giffords underwent emergency surgery. Part of her skull was removed to prevent further brain damage caused by the swelling. She was placed into a medically induced coma to allow her brain to rest. During a memorial ceremony on January 12th, President Obama announced that earlier that day Giffords had opened her eyes for the first time since the attack. As Giffords' status improved, she began simple physical therapy and music therapy. So Mark Robinson, he's sitting there saying some folks need killing. Sharron Angle says, why don't we just do some Second Amendment remedies for an out-of-control Congress? Sarah Palin has crosshairs over Gabby Giffords' political district. Matt Bevin, these are all right-wing Republicans. These are all Republicans. Sarah Palin, Republican. Sharron Angle, Mark Robinson, Republican. The ex-governor of Kentucky, Matt Bevin, again, Republican, quoted Thomas Jefferson about Shays' Rebellion. Thomas Jefferson had said, the tree of liberty is watered by the blood of patriots and tyrants. Here's Matt Bevin's quotes. But I will tell you this, I do think it would be possible for the nation to survive, but at what price? He said, the roots of the tree of liberty are watered by what? The blood of who? The tyrants, to be sure, but who else? The patriots, whose blood will be shed. Matt Bevin continued, it may be that of those in this room. It might be that of our children and grandchildren. I have 9 children. It breaks my heart to think that it might be their blood that is needed to redeem something, to reclaim something that we, through our apathy and our indifference, have given away. This is a reference to the letter Thomas Jefferson wrote to William S. Smith in 1787, in which Jefferson criticized Shays' Rebellion as being founded in ignorance, but suggested that occasional uprisings are good because they keep citizens engaged. Every 20 years, actually, he said, we need a revolution. Let's talk about Palestine. All of a sudden, violence is going to be a problem. All of a sudden, political violence is going to be a problem. Not only are they talking a bunch of crazy shit, just look at American foreign policy. You have coup d'etat after coup d'etat in Chile, and anytime there's a left-winger that's Cuba, Venezuela. Let's talk about Palestine. 180,000 people have been killed, mostly women and children. And maybe people aren't seeing the images. we could see the images on Twitter, and what we're seeing is a bunch of dead children, decapitated children, body parts all over the place. I saw a body of a child hanging on the rafters. Looked like it was decapitated. A father was looking for his 4 children amongst the rubble. One father had to identify his daughter in a plastic bag. Hey, here's a little plastic bag. Is that your daughter? Hitler tried to overthrow the German government, and then he got elected. When it comes to Palestine, even, Bobby Jr. is on the side of Israel. And the 2 main candidates, the presumptive nominees of the big business imperialist class, both of them are slam dunks for Israel. So Russia invading Ukraine is bullshit, but Israel invading Palestine is A-okay for these people? Hitler tried to overthrow the German government, and then he got elected. Now, Donald was actually in the middle of a speech about how he hates immigrants. Of course we need strong borders. We also need to stop overthrowing Guatemala and Venezuela and Chile socialist governments and pretend like the CIA coup d'etats aren't ruining these countries. They have socialists, and then the corporations are off a Chiquita banana. We'll overthrow governments in order to defend corporations. Chiquita banana. And then when their country is in turmoil and the people are running to our borders, you act like our CIA killing the presidents and the leaders of these countries has nothing to do with the immigration crisis. You had the president of Argentina, Cristina Kirchner. She about got shot and killed. There was a dude ran up to her, pulled the trigger, it misfired. There was 5 bullets in the gun of the shooter. Obama was the deporter-in-chief. They act like, some people believe in open borders, but none of the Democrats elected. And Joe Biden is right-wing conservative. He is so right-wing conservative, it's not even funny. He's status quo Joe. He's, welfare reform, kicking people off of welfare, crime bill. He's a Ronald Reagan. If you like how things are, vote for him. He will keep everything the same. Donald will change everything, but change it the exact opposite. He will change it in very bad ways. The opposite of Bernie Sanders. We could have had Bernie Sanders. So let's talk about the violent political rhetoric of the right. Let's talk about the violent political rhetoric of the right. Mark Robinson, Sharron Ingalls, Sarah Palin, Matt Bevin. You have SCOTUS setting Donald up to be a totalitarian dictator for life. January 6th was either an insurrection or a riot. Oh, it wasn't an insurrection. It was a riot. Well, both of those are bad things. Are we going to read him the Riot Act? When is he going to get read the Riot Act? We all heard Donald give that speech that sent the guys into Congress. It's crazy. These people are pushing for a civil war. The Confederate flag didn't fly in the White House during Lincoln, but it did under Donald. The Confederate flag made it to the White House under Donald. We shouldn't forget about the 1 million Iraqis killed, nor should we forget about the 180,000 Palestinians killed. Donald used Palestinian as a slur, as a pejorative against Joe Biden. Oh, you're just a Palestinian. Max Blumenthal had said, look at how the media is reporting this. They're downplaying the violent aspect of the thing. Palestine is being invaded by Israel. We defend Ukraine because it's being invaded by Russia. One country cannot invade another country. We ought to defend Palestine because it's being invaded by Israel. It's just basic common sense. Nixon once said that we can hedge on domestic issues, but foreign policy, we've got to get our foreign policy right, or else dismantle the empire. Why be the policeman on the block if we're going to let criminals kill 180,000 Palestinians, give the job to Bolivia, Congo, Mozambique? Clearly we're in over our heads. The Civil War is the worst conflict in our history because 2% of the population was killed. Right now in Palestine, 8% of Palestine has been killed. 8%. Now this is fascism. Donald is a neo-fascist. And what a fascist is they say, do as I command or else violence will happen. Violence isn't their last option. Violence is their first and often option. Violence is in their DNA. It's in their blood. A fascist. That's what they are. That's who they are. A bully, fascist, violent. As a peacenik liberal, as a tree-hugging hippie, I believe that violence should be the last resort. The very last option for self-defense and only for self-defense. In self-defense, violence should quell the threat and be proportional. It's much harder to be good than it is to be evil. If a person could just go around being a violent pile of shit to anybody and everybody, well, that's an evil criminal pile of shit. Charlottesville Nazi killing of Heather Heyer. What did Donald say about that? There's very fine people on both sides, which means the Nazis. Oh, some of those Nazis are very fine people. Very, very fine people on both sides. You got very fine people on the left, very fine people. Is that who the right identified themselves with? So not only did he say that there were very fine people on both sides of the Nazi rally in Charlottesville, North Carolina, the one that got Heather Heyer killed. Later on, Donald is going to condemn the KKK and the Nazis, but he forgot to say the Confederates are worthless, anti-American piles of shit as well. Confederate flag is all over the fucking place, even in northern states, even in states that had nothing, even in the battle-born state. People fly the Confederate flag just to be racist piles of shit. That's terrorism. That's anti-American terrorism. And unfortunately, the Mississippi Plan ended Reconstruction. The Mississippi Plan worked, so you threaten violence. That's how segregation happened. Reconstruction had ended. Reconstruction had failed. Slavery was over, but then the KKK was in charge for 100 years in America. Slavery was abolished, but then segregation happened for 100 years. Why? Because Reconstruction failed. Why did Reconstruction fail? Because of the Mississippi Plan. This is when the white racist, the KKK, says we're going to go to the voting booths. We're going to go and use violence and violent rhetoric to stop black folks and righteous whites who think black folks are people from voting. On the Proud Boys, what did he say about the Proud Boys? You had the debate between Joe Biden and Donald. When they said, are you going to condemn white supremacists? He says, sure, I'll condemn white supremacy. And then it was suggested, well, what about the Proud Boys? And then Donald said to stand back and stand by. So you're going to condemn the white supremacists or not? Basically, he's stay locked and loaded. Be ready. Do the Mississippi Plan. This is, what was Nixon, the Southern strategy? You use dog whistles. You say racist shit without saying overtly racist shit. January 6ers were shouting to hang Mike Pence. They weren't going to tickle him. They weren't going to give him a good talking to. They weren't buying him presents. They were going to string Mike Pence up and hang him by the neck until he was dead. Why? Because he wasn't on board with stealing the election. He was going to be constitutional. So it's a good thing Biden had trounced Donald in 2020, because if the election was close, and January 6th could have set off a powder keg, a civil war in America, defending the post-truth liar in chief. What if the election was close? If the election was close and he pushed for it, then we may never know which election, which way it went. But we know he's a lying pile of crap. He tried to overthrow the government and all. He just started a riot. That's not any better. He started a riot in Washington, D.C. And then last but not least, on Edward Snowden, they're talking about Pandora's box to the Leviathan. The website BuzzFeed had said that there were intelligence officials who said that they want Edward Snowden dead. The Pentagon official said, I would love to put a bullet in Edward Snowden's head. He is single-handedly the greatest traitor in American history. The greatest traitor, bigger than Benedict Arnold, bigger than the Rosenbergs. The greatest traitor in American history. An NSA analyst also told BuzzFeed. In a world where I would not be restricted from killing an American I personally would go and kill myself. A lot of people share this sentiment. So the NSA, the Pentagon, is sitting there saying that they wanted Edward Snowden dead and that they would either love to put a bullet in his head or they would personally go and kill him themselves. And what did Donald say about Edward Snowden? Donald said that Edward Snowden is nothing but a traitor. Jill Stein says that we should put Edward Snowden in charge of the NSA. But Donald said, I think Snowden is a terrible threat. I think he's a terrible traitor. And you know what we used to do in the good old days when we were a strong country? You know what we used to do to traitors, right? Trump said, Politico reported, well, you killed them, Donald, said Eric Bolling. Trump's response, well, he is damaging America. You know what we used to do to traitors, right? Edward Snowden, the hero, the Jesus Christ of our age, the guy who's told us the truth, who ran away from a six-figure job. To Donald, he's nothing but a traitor. And America ought to recreate history in dealing with him, real estate mogul. In other words, execute him. What about Pelosi? Paul Pelosi had survived an assassination attempt. Donald Trump Jr. and Sr. mocked it. Apparently they were going to go Halloween. There was a hammer and a pair of underwear. They're going to dress like Paul Pelosi for Halloween. And I guess Paul Pelosi was in his underwear and some crazy person broke into their house and attacked him with a hammer. I think hit him in the head, gave him a serious head wound. Did some serious damage. I'm not for sure the exact damage, but it was like, wow. That was like a big fucking deal. So when it comes to the rhetoric on the right, I mean, these people are out of control and out of their minds. It's not just Donald talking a bunch of shit. It was every day he talked a bunch of shit. Every goddamn day. On Twitter, every goddamn day. And then we've seen, you know, Matt Bevin, Sarah Palin, Sharron Angle, Mark Robinson. And then Donald himself on Edward Snowden, who's right up there with Julian Assange and Chelsea Bradley Manning. Edward Snowden is a hero. So I'm going to talk about the historical context of what happened yesterday, the assassination attempt. But when it comes to right-wing rhetoric, people, I guess, really hold themselves in their own little worldview. And when they hear liberals say something, the conservatives freak out. When the conservatives say something, liberals freak out. Both sides are saying incredibly crazy, over-the-top shit. So I'm not going to hear that only the left uses rhetoric. The right uses violent rhetoric, violent political rhetoric. So when Lauren Boebert says it was all Joe Biden's fault, she forgets about her own rhetoric. And I bet you the FBI is going to blame Leonard Peltier for all of it. I bet you it was Leonard Peltier. You know it was him. You know it was Leonard Peltier. You know it.